Okay. Okay, shall I start?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here this afternoon. And welcome to 22nd Architect Speaks, organized by SONA. I am landscape architect Ruchi Bajachai, your moderator. I would like to request the audience to send in their questions to the speaker in the question box, which will be addressed at the end of the presentation. And also request to senior architects to tap on the raise hand button if they would like to share some thoughts at the end. I hope we'll have a very interesting interaction this evening. Design calls for stories yet unimagined, thoughts yet to be reproduced, fresh encounters and good vibes. The human mind perceives its surroundings in 5 different ways: sight, sound, smell, touch, and taste. For a complete experience of any space, the built form has to cater to all 5 senses superimposing upon each other, but not overpowering any. This is the principle followed by architect Sanjay Mohe. And today we are pleased to welcome architect Sanjay Mohe, a very distinguished architect from India. Architect Mohe is an alumni of J.K College of Architecture, Mumbai, and a founding partner of Bangalore-based firm Mindspace. He has had many reputed positions prior to that, a working association of 21 years with Chandavarkar and Thacker. His experiences also include a short involvement with late Charles Correa's office in Saudi Arabia. He has had a wide range of award-winning projects, ranging from institutions, residences, housing, research labs, memorials, libraries, hospice, factories, beach resorts, and many more. He has also been recognized in numerous platforms such as International Annual Award of Architectural Review London, J.K. Great Masters Award for Lifetime Achievement in 2019, a Golden Architect Award by A+D and Spectrum Foundation, also A+D and Spectrum Foundation Award, which he has won 3 times. And another amazing feat of architect Mohe is J.K. Cement Architect of the Year Award, which he has won 8 times. And some of the projects are TTK Factory for Industrial Architecture in 1991, Hindustan Unilever Research Center in 2007, Rohan Mithila Housing Project, among them. Architect Mohe is also well known, face adorning a lot of architectural forums, talks, and juries. To talk about his design, he has devoted his time creating architecture that strives for multifunctionality and quality of life, seeking ideas without limits, spaces without boundary, making spaces which is in harmony with nature are some of Mr. Mohe's design philosophies. And today he will be sharing with us his philosophies on spatial and architectural experiences. I am sure we will have a great learning experience from this talk. With that, I ask all of you to give our full attention to architect Sanjay Mohe, and let's welcome him to this webinar. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much, Ruchi.
I hope that introduction justifies your experience. I think it's a lot of accomplishment along the experience, along your way. I hope the stage is all yours, sir.
Thank you so much. So I will start sharing the screen.
Yes, sir, please.
Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
It's a full screen, no?
Yes, it's full screen.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to interact with you all. And I have some wonderful memories of visiting Nepal, Kathmandu. And it was about, I think about 14 years back, there was a function arranged by A+D in Kathmandu. And we had this fortune of visiting this wonderful place. And when I went there to Patan and saw these group of temples, the ability of this space to absorb people and absorb that energy within, it was absolutely wonderful. So these are some of the spaces which you have been visiting them so often, but for us, seeing it for the first time was something else. And use of that levels, use of that bricks, and so much of detailing going into it was something which was unbelievable. And it was not only on the larger scale, but it was, you would see it on a smaller scale in every door frame, every threshold, every lintel. There was some kind of a detailing going into it. And even on the floor, on the small wall, which you just don't even, while passing by, you just notice these things. And you realize there's so much of passion and the love with which these people would have built it, that adding these small details, even while doing one small corner. And this is something what we have to learn. And using just one material, same material for the floor, for the wall, for the ceiling. And that's what it reminds me of these carved out spaces, which you find in Mahabalipuram in India. And these carved out kind of spaces where the floor becomes the wall and the wall becomes the ceiling. This is something which I always love, and this is something which you always want to have that kind of character in your work. It's not only about that carved out spaces, but one more thing which is very important is whether it's a palace, whether it's a temple, or whether it's a small house, it follows one language. Within this, there is a temple, there are houses, and there are so many other things, but the language is same. There's such a strong harmony, there's such a strong binding power within all that everyone follows one language, and that makes it very, very powerful statement. And then that's how it starts absorbing people within that space. And Mr. Doshi always calls architecture as a habitat. It's about absorbing people, absorbing activities. So having people with the architecture without people has absolutely no meaning. So you build these things for people to absorb activities, to absorb that energy within that spaces. And this is what happened when we visited. I saw these spaces. And we had been to Bhutan a few years back. And we saw something very, very similar. I was talking about that kind of a synergy between whether it's a small house or a palace or a temple. You follow one architectural typology across, and that's what combines it together. So the same language gets carried through within a courtyard, and the same language carried through in the costumes also. Even the dresses are same, and even the fabric is same, and even the detailing is same. So when we look back and see all this, they are so much in harmony with each other. It's like one cannot exist without the other, or I would say one is incomplete without the other. And that's what gives that energy to this whole place. And that's what that in Bhutan, they say that happiness quotient is very high. It's one of the happiest places. So it's not about the physical part of it. It's not only about the appearance, but it goes much deeper. It makes you more peaceful, to living with harmony, to create that sense of equilibrium across as you occupy those spaces. And that becomes very, very important. And this is what we sort of try to learn from visiting these places. It's about architecture for people, and how do you really build those spaces. So if you start looking at activities, you start looking at people and their activities, you try to sort of create enclosures which are appropriate for that particular activity. So you would start designing a place around it. And I would say that you would sort of create different typology of a space, different quality of light, different kind of a volume, which would be appropriate for that particular activity. And you almost start carving out spaces for particular activities, and you build up a whole story. So when you are designing it, you're actually putting all these elements together and trying to weave the whole story, which eventually becomes a building and becomes a experiential process as you go through that whole journey of discovering architecture. Now, we tend to do a lot of schools, and then you start asking this question, what is the right classroom? Or forget about a classroom, you don't even, classroom is actually the answer for a place, appropriate learning space. So you first ask a question, what is the appropriate learning space? And then you think about this Rabindranath Tagore's Shantiniketan, where everything is taught under the trees. So there are really no classrooms. You just go sit under the trees and learn. And you you begin to realize that those are probably the best places where you exchange knowledge, and you are just in the presence of a teacher and he's trying to sort of impart knowledge into you. But because of certain requirements in terms of protection from the rain and sun and all, you need to have a kind of pavilion. And these pavilions, which were typically, you find so many of them in Nepal when we visited last time. And actually, probably historically, these were not only the places of worship, they were places of learning as well. So the guru would sit there on a slightly elevated place, and all the shishyas would sit around, and then they would have a discourse, and that would be the place of learning. The breeze will be going through. You will hear birds chirping, and you will smell the grass around it. And so you are not enclosed into a so-called classroom which has walls on all the four sides, and sometimes air conditioned, sometimes artificially lit and all that. So do you need that to happen? And that was a question when you start designing a learning space. So we started here with the idea of a pavilion, where we had this large site where we had to do an international school. And we said, why not create pavilions within the trees? But that started becoming really too out of control. So we said, we will have, instead of opening on all the four sides, we will have opening on 3 sides, and we'll create an enclosure. But even this was taking too much of area. So finally, what we did was we created a kind of pavilion with the courtyards on 2 sides, and which opens out into the green eventually. So we took that as a module, and we started working on it, where you have this series of classrooms with courtyard on either side, and which eventually leads into the green space outside. So that's the section where there is a central courtyard, which is common for everyone. And then you have these attached courtyards, and then you move around. So this is like a pavilion which opens out into the court on this side, court on the other side. If required, this is in Hyderabad. So when the temperature goes beyond 40 degrees, you can enclose it and air condition it. But otherwise, it is open. And you have a choice of conducting a class in this semi-open space, or you can take the children and sit under the tree and work. And this particular school gives you options to exploit all these different possibilities. So the section, you have this common courtyard for all the children. You have a classroom with courtyard on either side, and then there is outer space. And this is something which typically happens in our courtyard house, where you have a road outside, you have an open space, then you have a semi-open space as a courtyard, then you have a semi-enclosed space as a veranda, and then you have a closed space where you need a privacy, security, and things like that. So the house is series of these enclosures of different privacies, where you have a hierarchy of privacy, where there's a place in the outside where you communicate with the outer world. There's a space inside where you communicate with your family, and you communicate with the sky above. And that's how we started building this school, giving those different kinds of privacies. And this is how it was built. But talking about the people and the way they occupy the space, this is in Mumbai, in a fort area. And I studied in J.J. College of Architecture, which is very next to this busy DN road. And this was long back, but even those days, this place used to be equally crowded. Even about, I'm talking about 40 years back, it used to be equally crowded, equally noisy, and equally energetic. So when you would walk on this street, you will not realize the kind of buildings you are surrounded with. And then there was this colonnade around, full of shops, vendors and all, which is this. And again, when you walk here, you are so much involved in this, that architecture became only a backdrop. You are never even aware of what kind of buildings which are there on that DN road. But we used to work in the night, late in the night, we used to do our submissions and all. And night at about 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, we used to walk on the middle of this road. And that time we used to realize the kind of buildings, the detailing, and the kind of enrichment which is there on this, which during the day you would never notice it at all because of that occupation of that space. And that's where you begin to understand the importance of occupation of a space. When people occupy the space, how the architecture becomes purely a backdrop to absorb those activities. And then how do you design for those activities? So if you look at one end of the spectrum is a very quiet space, like a meditative space for one person, or a place like a library where you need to have quietness, concentration. And the other end, you have something like a railway station or airport, which is bustling with activities. And then you have spaces in between. You have a house, or you have a school, or you have a shopping mall. And so you work with this whole spectrum. And when you start designing, let's say I'm designing a school, I would say that it is going to have that kind of, so many kids running around, with so much of energy and, interaction and all. So, but that space also needs a library. So that also needs a quietude. And then when there is social gathering, when they have their functions, performances, it goes to the other end of the spectrum. So you have to sort of, as a designer, you start looking at this. When you design a house, would you design it only for a family, or you would design it for slightly more, for a few more friends also to come and interact? At the same time, it has to be a kind of a meditative space also. So you would sort of try to define those sections, so spectrum. So whatever you design, you will have, on one side you have a quietude, on other side you would have a lot of these noise, energy, etc. And then you try to play within that spectrum. And I think the power of architecture is to be able to absorb those kind of activities. Now I'll show you one of our recent projects. This is Titan Corporate Office, which was completed about 2 years back. And on a typical day, you have about 10 people sitting here. And then there are, say, during lunchtime, this becomes quite crowded, but otherwise it has this kind of occupancy. But there was when, actually this Titan is, they make watches, they make eyewears, they are into so many products. And whenever a product launch happens, this same space becomes very, very active. This becomes full of activities, and you will find people just crowding into that space. So it should be able to absorb that kind of crowd. And again, it should go back to a very meditative kind of quiet space. And this is what is interesting in terms of absorbing people into the space. But these Titan people, when they gave us the brief of the project, this was very, very interesting. They are very enlightened clients. I mean, you would have heard about Tata's and how, I mean, they are into philanthropies and so many things. So one of their requirement was, they said, you create an elevating experience. There were other things about, it talks about Titan's strength of design edge, innovation, ethics has to be expressed into the building. The campus has to be nature campus, full of water bodies, walkways, etc. It has to be like a university, not like an office. Intelligent, sustainable, one community. But what really sort of inspired us the most is this idea: create elevating experience. And how do you do it? It's not measurable. It's not like you do this, and you create an elevating experience. And I started wondering, I mean, what are the places, when I look back, is there anything which gave me an elevating experience? And there were so many of them, but what strikingly came to my mind is this Kailash temple in Ellora, Ajanta, Ellora. And when I visited this is a very personal experience that I just felt absolutely enlightened. I mean, what they were calling it as an enlightened experience, I just felt that because of the sheer scale, because of the way these spaces were carved out. We are so used to seeing a carved out space like a cave. This is like a space, this is like a carved out space which is out of one huge rock, and it still is a part of the mountain, and it still becomes part of the people. So at one end it is anchored into the rock, into the mountain. At the other end it is absorbing people and these activities, and in the space it is in other contexts it is creating these wonderful spaces, and as you walk through, you sort of discover these spaces which are absolutely unbelievable. And these bridges going across, imagine it is all carved out of one stone, one big rock. And imagine the idea of a creator when he started carving from the top, to imagine all these spaces, which were already inside, like Michelangelo talks about his work. When he said that when I saw this big piece of marble, that angel was inside. What I did is only I removed unwanted pieces of marble, and that angel was already inside that. So you sort of begin to feel that this whole temple was already inside that rock, and what was removed was only some unwanted pieces. And that's what gives that energy to that. And I was in one of these places in Madurai, and I saw this rock, and then I was imagining this space. I said, how can you, I mean, when I see this rock, I can never think about it. I think of nature, I think of sunset, I think of, the place around it, absorbing this nature. But for somebody to think that if you carve out this, there exists a temple within this, and that is something which is a brilliant idea, and only a great mind can think about this. And this was something amazing too. This rock, I mean, it is part of the hill, part of these wonderful spaces. And this is how it looks when it is carved out. And then we were thinking of relating that to creating some kind of a non-building which would become part of the nature, which will get absorbed into the nature. So we had this image of these rice fields, which I'm sure you must be so much used to it in Nepal. So in South India, in some of these, in Malnad and all, we keep seeing a lot of these rice fields. And what we were imagining was, over the years, when we create these kind of terraces, the whole building will disappear into nature and will become part of the nature. So we started with this as a water body, which is bio lake. Then created this shallow lake, which is for the firefighting water, which you need about 3 lakh liters of water for firefighting, which became a shallow lake. And then you can walk across the entire skin of the building. And they wanted a nature campus, which is what it is. And during lunchtime, you walk across this and you meet all your friends, colleagues, and interact through. And then there are these 5 vertical kind of atriums, which symbolize each of their Titan verticals, jewelry, watchmaking, and things like that. And then there is a lake next to the site. So we were trying to relate it to the natural lake, to bio lake, to this shallow water body. And then you have a connection from here across, right across, and connect it almost to the horizon. And you bring in light from the top. And as a section, we were working with these terraces along the water, and then creating almost like a valley along the water, and creating a lot of interactions along. And this is what it looked like eventually. The shallow water coming in, going, becoming, bio lake, and what you see beyond is a natural lake. And the reflection of this water onto the ceiling, and the way this is almost like, the light coming from the top, the atriums. This is from the basement when you come across. There's the dining, and at every level you are connected with the nature. And we wanted people to walk across, use these outdoor spaces. So the outdoor meeting spaces are as important as indoor working spaces. And right from the beginning, we wanted this to happen, where even Titan was very keen that people should take their laptops, go sit under a tree and work. So you have a possibility of working indoor or outdoor, and that's what happens. So the entire office is like a veranda. It's like a glorified veranda where whenever you want, you just come out and sit. And this is not an air conditioned space. It is air cooled. There is a humidifier, and this is evaporative cooling, which is used on a very large scale. So during this situation, COVID situation, where we don't want air conditioned spaces, this seemed to work much better, because there is 100% fresh air pumped into this. There's hardly any return air which comes in, so you are always surrounded with the fresh air. And there is a large saving in terms of power consumption. So this is how it looks early in the morning. These are amphitheaters, the facade, the water bodies, bio lake. You started getting a lot of birds, fish. This is how it looks from the top. All these, there are amphitheaters here, and it almost you can make out that it is a non-building. And these are drone shots. So as you see, this is up to this point is a bio lake, and this becomes a shallow water tank. And these are the top. And this shot was taken about a month back, during this lockdown time. And this nature has really taken off, and you feel nice looking at that. Now, it's about absorption against illumination. And this is a typical Japanese tatami room, where they work with this tatami mats. Their life is about this minimalism, the whole Zen philosophy it's about illumination, not about absorption. And that's how they're so used to that culture. And that's what is reflected in the works of somebody like Tadawando, which you see absolutely minimal furnishing, minimal intervention into the space. But as a Indian, or even as a Nepali, I don't think so we will feel very comfortable in occupying this space, because our culture is more about absorption. And this is what we see in a typical marketplace. It is full of things. It's not about removing things. It's about adding things, about absorbing it and making it part of your life. And you would see all these marketplaces. You will have two-wheelers going into it, cycles, and there's no confusion actually. If you look at it, the person who is staying in that place and going in, this person, or this person who is selling these flowers, he knows him personally. He hands over flowers to him, and he just goes off. And there is a kind of a inbuilt kind of a system which is overlapped into this. So for an outsider, it looks like a kiosk, but for us, it is all full of systems and some kind of a lab thing. So we become part of that. The people become part of that background, and you almost get absorbed into it. And it's about that absorption of and the aging of the building, and that's what matters. And this probably most of you must be aware of it. This is IIM Bangalore by Mr. B.V. Doshi. We are fortunate to do some work, additional work in this campus, which we have been doing it since last few years. But I'm talking about that absorption of activities, absorption of nature. And I think this is probably one of the buildings which has aged most gracefully over the last few years. Now it's already almost more than 35 years old. And the way the nature has grown over it and absorbed it is absolutely amazing. You hardly see any other building which has aged as gracefully as this. And I keep visiting this building almost every month, every 15 days, because we are doing some work there. And you will find it looking better and better every time you go there. So this was about 2 months back. This is Mr. Doshi, and he's taking pictures of this. And what is he interested in is this greenery, which has taken over that entire stone wall. And, so for him, what he's, every time he comes, he keeps taking these pictures. It's not about how the building looks, but how building is absorbing these things, how building is changing, how it is. And probably that's why we call it as a building, because when it is already built. So why do you call the building when it is already built? Because it is continuously changing. And as people occupy it, it keeps changing. And that's what is the beauty of this change. And this is what always interests us as a practice. And we start looking at our past work and start comparing it with, because we have been building for so long, and some of our work is close to about 25 years old, 20 years old. And when you do something new, you always want to sort of compare it. So I'm going to show you 4 building types beyond this: that a housing, institutional building, and a spiritual building. And I will very quickly compare a new work with an older one, which was done a few years back, just to see how the work has changed over the years, and that whole process of aging or process of change, which is always very nice. Now, this house was done almost about 20 years back, and this was done. There is a living room. There's an informal dining. It opens out to the courtyard on one side, courtyard on the other side. So you have this, the breeze flowing through, and then there is a security on the top, so you can totally open it and still feel safe. And then there are bedrooms above, etc., etc. But I was talking about the idea of absorption, especially in our context. So when it was built about let's say 20 years back, this was like that, with fairly barren walls. Comparatively less furniture. But in next few years, you started seeing so many objects coming into it. And during last few years, it has become like this. And it is like a full of objects, full of possessions. And this person, Anil and Champa, they are very, very close friends. I'm in this house almost every 15 days. So I'm really almost like a part of this family. And I keep telling them, you should remove this and you should, but for them, these are memories. Every time I tell them you remove this, they say, no, I have a memory of this. I bought it from there. So for them, house is a collection of memory. And for all of us as architects, we cannot impose our ideas and say that, no, it has to be a minimal house. You can't add this, you can't add. What as an architect you have to do is create a place for those memories to happen, memories to exist in that. And that's how it becomes collection of memories. So this house is not for you to photograph and publish it. It is for Anil and Champa to stay there and enjoy that spaces. And for them, these are their memories. They are their possession. And they have to be happy about it. They have to feel comfortable about it. For each one is linked with something of the past. So, so that is one which we had completed long back. And now we recently finished one house in Pune. This is in a very prime area, and this was an existing building. And this owner, our client, bought this plot along with this, and he wanted to demolish this house and construct a new one. And this was like sitting within the trees and full of trees. In fact, this is the first time I'm showing this. This came on Arc Daily just yesterday, or day before yesterday. It came in Arc Daily. So I'm showing this for the first time to you in any public forum. So this is a plot which is a fairly large plot, full of trees. We were not allowed to cut any of the trees, and anyway we would not have cut. So we preserved every tree and started working around that. So the footprint of the existing building was somewhere here. So we sort of, the larger chunk of the built area comes there. They wanted a swimming pool as one of their requirements. So that was a swimming pool, and that water sort of comes in, and this level is slightly higher. So it starts the water which is outside the house, it cascades into the house, becomes part of the courtyard, comes out of the house, goes across, there is a gym here, goes across and again meets this. So you are always in a presence of water as you come in. But you come in from here, this is the main road. Road is on two sides. You come into the cobblestone courtyard. You come from this door inside. Beyond this wall gives privacy for the pool and the house. And then you come into the living room. There is one extra room here, which could double up as a bedroom, but at present it is used more like a hobby room, which opens out into the courtyard. There's a toilet here, visitor's toilet. There's a water body here. You climb up. This is an informal gathering area. There is a bar here, and it opens out into the large, party lawn. This is the dining area, kitchen, utility. Then there is one bedroom, guest bedroom here, informal living room, which opens out into the large green space. There's a gym here, changing room, and then servants' quarters. On the first floor, there are 4 bedrooms with a breakout area or informal area. And each room almost opens out onto the 3 sides. So, and with a large terrace attached to each of these rooms. So that's quite nice. And you are almost within the trees. So branches of the trees everywhere, you're surrounded by. So whenever you are in any of these rooms, it almost feels like a tree house, which I'll show you the pictures. So that's the plan where you come in from here, come in, that's one room, living room, the dining area, formal living room, and then, informal living room and other places, the upper level, the sections. There is, this is in Pune. So Pune, the summer can get pretty hot. So we have this shading device, and there is a large gap of almost 2 meters on the top. So hot air goes beyond that, and then it gets flushed out from here. So it has louvers on all the sides. So the air goes out of it, and that really controls the temperature within the space. So that's that skylight, and these are the other sections. So that whole volume feels like one connected volume. So you come into this entrance court, which has a cobblestone. His father is on a wheelchair, so there's a ramp along this. That's the door where you sort of come into the thing. There's a swimming pool beyond that, so this gives a privacy. There is one tree which goes through this, and on the left side is the entrance. So you come into the entry. This is a formal living room. You see the bar there, and then there is a lawn beyond that. That's the informal living room. That's the water which goes out from here. This is the room on the left side, which was designed as one additional bedroom, which is kind of a hobby room now, opens out. And then you go to the first floor there, there's the small level difference. Again, looking towards the gym area. And here you see that skylight, which is controlling the light within the space. That's the gym, what you see beyond. And that pot becomes a focal point when you look across. In the night, it gets lit up. So again, the same thing. This is towards the dining. So that's the dining. That's the water body on the outside. So it cascades down. There is a waterfall. So you hear the sound, soft sound of that water within the space. It goes under that, comes here, and then goes across. And this wood sort of comes down. So predominantly, you are looking at 3 materials: the black flooring, which goes throughout. This is a gray solid stone, which is almost like 4 inches thick, which forms all the steps and edges. And then you have this stone which comes from Madurai, which is a lighter color stone, and we have used 2 textures. And this wood comes in and forms like one extra layer within. So that's all. We are just playing with a limited palette in terms of architectural materials. And then we have engraved some of these elements. This symbolizes Lakshmi in terms of these tantric symbols, and again, connection with nature all the time. Again, looking back at the entrance, that's the entry when we came in from here. This is the dining, looking towards the inside court, looking out from dining. So there is a water body which is outside here. And this is a sit out from the informal living room with these steps, huge granite, it's like a chiseled granite. So it feels nice to sit here with, put your feet into the water and sit, and it just a nice feel to be there under the trees. So that's an informal thing, but you can actually sit on these steps. And these were all existing trees which were preserved, and looking back at that water body across. This is from the gym. You are looking back at the house. This is the front area. We entered from here behind this. So that's the entrance court. That was that hobby room courtyard. And you see this is the eastern side. So eastern sun comes from here. And then we use the same stone to create the similar skylight. Also the same language gets repeated. And then we have solar panels here to generate power for most of the requirements of the house. So this actually came in later, the idea of having those, but eventually we managed to sort of make it part of the scale has increased because of that, but still because of the power saving and all, it was worth it doing that. As I said, every room have this large sit out, and it feels like a tree house because you're always surrounded by trees from all the sides. This is another bedroom. This from the upper level. There is this family room which looks down. This is from the dining area. Sorry, this is from the main entrance looking back. And then this entry court, and there are a lot of structural exercises what we did in terms of. So this is so you could see the difference in terms of expression from the first house to the second house. And that is something which we were always interested in how do we progress in terms of detailing, in terms of the scale of the house is much bigger, but the approach is different, though the fundamental principles are same in terms of connecting with nature, in terms of making it naturally ventilated, playing with natural light, etc. Now, moving on to the housing, I'll quickly show one housing scheme which we had done again about 25 years back. And this was for a low income group. This is something which I always like a lot, though it had a few problems in terms of detailing and all. But these guys used to stay in, was in part of Indian Institute of Science, and they call it class 3, class 4 employees, which are more like the sweepers and the gardeners and the peons and all. They used to stay in these kind of houses. And these front yards used to be very active, like this, children playing there, rangolis here, that door step used to be very, very active. But this interaction was happening more by compulsion because the interiors were very, very dark and, not very hygienic. So we had to move them into a ground plus 2 storied structures. But we said that the kind of activities happening here should continue to happen, even they are moved into it. So as per the norms, they could be given only 350 square feet or 450 square feet, 2 different categories. But we said irrespective of that, wherever they stay, they should have this extra open to sky space of about 100 square feet, where the activities could spill over, which can be used even for sleeping in the night. A lot of activities could happen during the daytime. Even the kid can sit and study here and things like that. So we created these terraces at different levels and started creating this whole street and with bridges going across only 2 of these elements which were turned to create that dynamism into the whole street. And there's a lot of openings here. And these are more like series of rooms because these rooms were so small. And normally the family structure is very high. So in the night, the living room would be used as a bedroom, or even the kitchen could be used as a bedroom. So we were trying to analyze it as a area during daytime, how it would get used, and during nighttime, how it would turn into 3 different rooms for, for different usage. So it was built on that basis, and this is how it looked like. And you will see those different terraces. There were issues here in terms of we were not sensitive enough to understand that they would start using these terraces as if they started washing clothes here and all, which created a problem for the people staying at the lower level and things like that. But we learned a lot of things through this. So this was a nice exercise. The idea of, even those who stay here, they feel connected, and, the way these creepers were grown and things like that. And the kind of activity which we were looking for, it started happening. And now this is what we have done, which is after so many years. And we were looking at something which had to be constructed as a very high speed, because use of technology was important. This was again for the affordable section. So we went to Turkey to understand this tunnel forming, which is a formwork like this. I'll just explain it, which is lifted up and placed into the place. And then you have all the services built into that whole fabric, all the windows, all the electrical things, etc. Then these 2 L-shaped units are tied together, and then the entire thing is cast at a time. You have to build this platform. Now this was in Turkey, and whatever we saw was very, very repetitive, though the quality of concrete was quite amazing. The whole place was very, very repetitive kind of a thing. So we were trying to see how to break that repetitiveness and how to make it more interesting. So the plan had to be built on these modules. So as you see, there are these L-shaped elements. They are all put together, creating these tunnels. And then you put all of them together and concrete it together. So you are concreting wall plus the slab together, along with all these openings and things like that. And then these tunnels are removed and then placed on the top. And this goes very fast. Like every alternate day, you pour one day, you leave it for one day, and you remove the shuttering, and then you keep few props to hold the, till it gets cured, and then you just move on. So literally you can cast 15 floors in 30 days. So the speed was absolutely enormous in terms of, completing that. So we looked at RCC walls in one direction and the infill walls in other direction. So this is the Salk Institute by Louis Kahn, and then this was something which we took it as a reference for building up the thing. So you have these plans, and then we tried to create this variation in terms of skyline, which was possible to just stop the formwork at different level to get varied skyline. We created a lot of connections across, so that there will be a variation. So we created those kind of connections across. And then the most challenging thing was to create double height spaces. So when you build this tunnel on the top, you need to have these platforms around. So we devised a way of creating these double height volumes. And that's how you see this whole process. First 2 floors are a conventional thing. Then you build up these tunnels, then you cast them, then you remove these tunnels, then you place them on the top. And then the whole process goes on one after another. And actually you do this, then you do that, then you do that, then you do that. And it goes on, and that's how the whole building progresses. But as a site plan, we wanted to create a kind of a green open space which would connect the whole thing, and creating again access where the the junction becomes a vintage point. We wanted kids not to cross any vehicular road, and then you would have a connection with mother looking at the kid. So we created the landscape and the things in such a way that no kid needs to cross a vehicular road to reach a green space. So you have these kind of elements going across till you reach the central green space. To create these different spaces for different age groups, from toddlers to uh, to youngsters to old people, and create these different kind of interaction spaces. These were the renderings initially, night views, and this is how it started, where you had these conventional uh, built up to the lower level. Then you start with these tunnels. You start doing this, pouring it, and you start pulling it out from different sides as it comes up. And here you see these dates of each one. Like if this is concrete on first, this is concrete and on fourth, this is on seventh, this is on ninth. So it's every alternate day you keep casting this, and that's how it goes on, and the speed is quite phenomenal. So we did a lot of precasting exercise, did a lot of elements to make it look non-repetitive. So even the different types of railings, different types of combinations. There are a lot of these precast bridges and all which are lifted up and placed. There are precast toilets which are done on the ground, lifted up and kept, and then you already have a finished toilet to deal with, because you don't have to wait for the tiling of each toilet to finish. The staircases were precast. So that's how this whole thing came up, and this is how it started looking eventually. So you would see these main concrete walls, which are very nicely finished and infill like a brickwork. The play areas, the greenery has started growing now. This is part of it is still happening, but half of the buildings are already occupied. We started doing these graphics. These are large plazas though it is an affordable section, it doesn't look like affordable. It's not at a cost of quality. The quality is not compromised anywhere. You have this swimming pool and more interaction areas. Whatever the existing trees were preserved. When you see the pool graphics, this gets reflected into the water, and there's a sense of illusion when somebody walks through. So same graphic is folded and taken across. Moving on to the institutional project. How much time is there? Is there enough time? We can go on. No?
Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah, okay. How much time is there? Accordingly,
So as in how long do you, as in how much long as in your presentation is going to be, as in?
Maybe around 20 minutes more.
So I think we can stretch a bit more, as in 12 minutes. I think it was supposed to be 5, but I think we can stretch it.
Okay, fine. So moving on to institutional project, this is what we had done. Again about 25 years back, which was a small library, and within a very dense trees. So you had this cluster of trees, and they asked us to make it into the library. So when I saw those cluster of trees, I said, this is the best place to take a book and sit under it. Why do you really need to build something around it? Because you have to just preserve this greenery. So so we started, the first approach was to preserve those trees and make them like a center of whole nucleus of the library, and build almost like a fortress kind of thing around that. So that's how that whole idea came in. So we started taking that. There was one small ditch next to these big grown trees, and we started putting this built up area around that, because you have to preserve the books, you have to sort of create these enclosures which are necessary. So the first reaction was, if these are the trees, why not preserve them and then create a sense of enclosure where you take a book, sit under a tree and learn. So this is how was our first reaction to use that space underneath. And then we said that each one of us has a different way to concentrate and learn. So somebody like me like to look at a blank wall and study. Somebody would like to have a double height. Somebody would like to have a very low height. Somebody might like to look out at a tree and learn. Somebody might like to just put feet in the water and then study, or somebody from the terrace. So we try to create all these options. So you take a book and then go into all these spaces and start doing it. So these are all places where the books are kept, but you have options of sitting into all these different places and start learning. And this is how it was done. These are those group of trees which were preserved. So it does look like a fortress, which is almost preserving the books around. And you have a choice of taking this. And this ditch was converted into almost like a temple tank, where you can put your feet into the water and sit. So this is how this library was done. And now we have done this school, which is recently done. In fact, not yet occupied because of COVID. Otherwise, by now it would have been running. But this is part of the larger complex and next to a play area. So this is where the site was full of trees. And typically you have these different 8 types of intelligences for each kid. Some are smart in music, some are smart in logic, some are smart in spirituality, some are into sports, some are into language and things like that. And you have to sort of nurture all these intelligences to create a great learning environment. And for the learning, for the smaller kids, you can see how energetic they can't sit quiet at one place. So you have to create a place suitable for that, and on the floor. So it's almost like a school within school. The relationship with the teacher is different. The facial expression, she would explain everything with facial expression. See the involvement of the kid and closeness of a teacher and a student, and the way they play with all these materials. When they grow, the relationship slightly changes. Relationship with the teacher changes. The play area changes. When they go to middle school, their interest changes. Relationship with the teacher becomes slightly more distant. They become more, the activities of games change. When they become adolescent, the whole body language changes. Again, they go into more research kind of analysis. The teacher-student relationship becomes even more distant. And they become more independent. They start doing things by their own. The sports become even more competitive, more challenging. So all that had to be taken into account while as the eye level changes, the space reach changes, the energy level changes, the play equipment change, the relationship with the parent change. They are very close to it here, then it slowly becomes distant. Then when you are adolescent, you want to be independent, not close to the parents. So even in terms of curiosity, the things and observation, things become different. Initially, you are very, very curious about everything. Parent as a hero, parent as a friend, and on your own. The relationship to the color, relation to the music, everything changes. And finally, the communication changes. From being very expressive from your face and crying and shouting, you start expressing through words, through body language, etc. So this was a site full of trees, and then there is a road on the other side, and we had to build this. We tried to preserve most of the trees. Few of them which came into this had to be removed. Some of them we preserved within the skylight and all that. But the whole idea of creating that transparency at the ground level, where you reach from outside to inside and create this quieter zone here. This is a noisy area on the other side. Not noisy right now, but might become noisy after another 10 years. So this is where the classrooms would come. That's the activity area, and we wanted to use activities under the trees, and try to sort of make use of that. So we tried to create a kind of a spine. Again, this project, I'm showing it for the first time because it's just getting over. So we were trying to sort of create a pathway which is kind of climbing up. So it starts from here, starts climbing up, becomes a kind of amphitheater, continues climbing up. Then you turn around and start climbing up across. Actually, this stretch becomes part of the facade as you climb up and you start reaching different places. And then you have a lot of these interaction areas, learning areas at different points. And we wanted the classrooms to not only classrooms to be learning spaces, but that should spill over into the areas under the trees and into these courts. And so that was that intention of spilling across. So the way the section worked at all, you had this interaction and then it sort of moved across into the space. And this is that path which comes across and all those different interaction. And that movement which became part of the external thing, became part of the facade externally. And we wanted these kids to experience the outer world as they climb up. And at the same time, it becomes an interactive facade. So when one class, you have these kids of 30, 40 kids jumping, shouting, and climbing onto this staircase, it becomes part of the facade. It becomes part of the language of expression, and this is what we want. These clients were very good in creating this precasting. That precasting yard was close by, so we use a lot of precast elements, very thin concrete pins with just about 70 mm thick and very nicely done with exposed concrete. And then we use exposed concrete as an expression because we were using this as an exposed concrete, which was used as pavers, as steps, and all as concrete elements, and that became that language. So this is at the ground floor. As I said, this whole ground floor becomes totally open. That's the spine as you climb up. As you climb up from there and come towards that set of steps, at different levels, it opens up and you see these mango trees. And kids, once this school starts functioning, you will find kids running around under these trees and jumping, climbing onto it. These were some who had come for taking admissions before this lockdown began. And the way light comes into the space, these are all those kind of kund, what Correa talks about. So these are all places where you can have discussions. And these are all precast elements which were incorporated into the building. So these are all meeting spaces. That whole spine which starts climbing along these steps, which becomes a amphitheater. That's the courtyard. This is from outside. This is the secondary entries. There's a separate entry for primary, middle school, and secondary school. So this is a middle school entry, and you continue climbing onto this. This becomes part of the external facade. The way the light comes in, the interaction which happens into most of our projects, the connection from the upper level, use of light, and this is how it looks from outside. That's that staircase which becomes part of the facade. We had a lot of discussions and we fought for these windows to come right up to the floor level, because we wanted to make it feel like a tree house, like you are sitting within the trees. And when the student sits away from the window, should be able to see through. And we sort of proved to them that how much that visibility would be lost. So the windows have to come right up to the floor. And then we created that ventilation device so that during night, when the classrooms are closed, you will still have a fresh air coming into it. So when in the morning, when you come into the class, it is cool. And then you have these fins which are protecting southwest sun. We did simulation. If you see January 3 o'clock, how the sun would come. At April 3 o'clock, how much sun would come into the classroom. And at July 3, because the school functions only up to 3 o'clock. So we were concerned about that, the direct sunlight coming in. So that simulation was done. And then you have this ventilation happening here. These are all the outer facade. Do I have time for one more, or shall we close here?
No, sir. So please continue.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So it's the last one. I'll take 10 more minutes.
Of course. Yes.
So this is about the spiritual building, and we were asked to do a temple, which is a Sai Baba temple, which was an existing temple which had to be redone. And actually, this is an image of a temple, because if I show this image to any kid will tell that this is a temple. But if you want to create a modern temple, how would you do it? So you start with this and you start modifying this image. And we started modifying it. So almost we are trying to delayer this. Each layer is you're trying to remove that layer. And then you're trying to bring the light into the space and create these cascading pavilions kind of a thing. And this is how that whole structure kind of developed. And we were looking at, a kind of space which will create spirituality, which will connect it to make you feel spiritually connected. So these were all initial, things. And then the idol, we couldn't move the idol, which was existing one. We had to build around that. So above that idol, we had to create that kalasha, which is the highest point. And then the whole form came up. This is more like a spiritual discourse room on the top, and this is one. This is a place where the devotees can stay who come from out of station, and that's how the whole section came in. And then the series structurally, it was quite a challenging thing, and this is how the entire thing came up. These were the sacred places of the existing temple, which had to be preserved and built around that, and the Pradakshina path, and this is how the temple came up. So this was long back, again, not too long, but I would say about 10 years back. And about 3-4 years back, we had to build a memorial for Dr. Anji Reddy. He's industrialist, but he used to be a huge philanthropist also. So he created these very affordable medicines, Dr. Reddy's labs, created a lot of research, came out with a lot of new research ideas, but did a lot of things for the students' education, for some of these villages to create water supply for them, and so many philanthropic things. So I had worked with him very closely, and then when he passed away because of cancer, the family decided to create a memorial for him. And this was a research lab which he himself had built, and he used to sit in one of these labs, and this was their house, and this was their farmhouse. And he used to, whenever some of the Nobel laureates and all used to come to meet him and all, and he used to take them for lunch from here into their house. And that there was a path that he used to take across. And this is what is their property right now. So we were asked to choose a site out of all this area, which itself was a difficult task. The whole family called me and said that you choose any of this where you can build a monument for it. So we found this to be the most appropriate place, and I'll tell you why. There were this series of trees. There was a scooter parking and all beyond that. This was an existing lab space where he used to work, and he used to come from there, take this path across, and then go to his house beyond. Now there are different situations which are happening. So this path looked like this, which was almost like a mud road. There was a banyan tree, not banyan, a peepal tree here. And it's a Bodhi Vriksha, as you called it, which is Buddha got enlightened sitting under this tree. And this has a religious significance, and it's a symbol of education as well. So, so that tree was there. This was another path, which was like this, but the boundary of the research lab was here. So we asked the family to remove this and move it here. So this belongs to the research lab. So this also became part of the monument. The third one was this row of trees, which were like that. And when you see from here, it almost became like a wall. So that became one strong reference. The fourth one was series of Gulmohar trees, and they were in a line, in a kind of a grid, which were formed. And initially, when we saw it was not so healthy, they were not kind of looked after well, but now they are absolutely thriving. So we took all those references and created this whole framework. So this is the path that he used to take, which became a symbolic path of his life. He grew up from a small village and became a big man. So this path represents his life. It starts with very rough stone. Then he generated he learned and became, so some stones become polished stones, then they become more polished. And then then that's the time he got his Mercedes Benz, and he got his money, But at that point, he realized he has to do a lot for the people, and that he became philanthropist. So that's where everything becomes grass and nature and all, and the path becomes almost part of the nature, and it meets that Bodhi tree at the end. So this is one path. This becomes a second path where where in the lunch times, some of the scientists, when they walk, they still knew him, they had worked with him. So when they walk as a leisure, on the way they sit onto these benches, which has some inspirational quotes and all, which I'll show you. And then they get a glimpse of this samadhi, which is there, which I'll explain it to you later. So the second thing was this grid of the trees, which was this Gulmohar trees. And this has this character of turning into a completely red. This is called Mayflower. So during May, June and all, it becomes completely red and the whole ambience changes. So we had to sort of position this samadhi where the ashes had to be buried, which had to be done very quickly. So we created that path within the grid of the trees, and, and created that void where those ashes are buried. So that became a relic. So those are there, and as that became a void and within the water, and we wanted that water to come sort of close to your eye level when you take a production or when you go around that. So we dipped it down. So when you go down, your eyes come very close to this water and you see the reflection of the whole thing. We wanted to show the presence of absence, and there is a video called Presence of Absence based on this. So we wanted to show that absence, which is this void, which gets reflected as a void here into the water, and then reflection into the water, which you see. He was a man of a team. So he would work with people, take people around. So it started very low, started becoming big and big. And even these openings, they start with one, then becomes 2, 3, then become more, then becomes group. And finally they become nature, and it becomes this wall. So this wall, which is an artificial wall or a built wall, become a wall of a nature, and then still gets connected. And all these openings get lit up in the night. And actually the inauguration was on a full moon night. And you see this, and then you see the stars on the top. So it's almost like connecting it with the cosmos. So that's the void. That is that idea of, and then idea of giving, because he gave a lot of he didn't even give knowledge, he gave wealth as well. So that idea of giving, which is expressed. He had a very sort of laugh, which was very, very energetic kind of a thing. And we wanted to represent it through some of these wind chimes, which are sort of hung into the trees, which you don't see, but you hear the sound. So these are all these elements which are put together. Another thing was, he was like a child. He would laugh like a child. very transparent person, and we wanted that whole path, your transparency into this to almost you see through this memorial symbolic of his nature of being transparent. So all these things are incorporated. There are 4 spines. There is one museum kind of a small thing where collection of his achievements, whatever the timeline, what he did, and there is one room where his office room is replicated. So you come in here, see through this opening, you can't enter through that, but you see this axis, then you see second axis, then you see third axis where you actually see the see that void, but you can't enter. So you actually rediscover the whole thing, and you come from here and rediscover thing. Along this axis, the first bike, Rajdut bike, when he used it, when he just started his career, to his first Mercedes, which is kept here. So when these young scientists, then they walk and they climb up some of these, they're slightly at a higher level. You know that any common person can achieve that goal, and you can also do it. And on the way, you look at this samadhi and you get enlightened, and you sit some of these benches and you say, I can also do it. And you get sort of energized and you go back and start working back. And that was the idea of, it was not only to remember him, but to energize these youngsters. So that's the samadhi. This is the first axis. These are those stones what I was talking about, starting from rough to semi-smooth to smooth to grass, and then this Bodhi tree beyond. This is the other axis, which shows these different achievements, what he did. This is the third axis where you see water. You go across and then touch it and then further discover it. So you come across here, you can touch this water, but you still, that's the bike that you see there. Behind the bike there is a map where he used to travel in Hyderabad city. This is where you see that void and you see reflection of that void, and that's where we call it kind of presence of absence. Here you can touch the water, but you still, know that before even entering, you have touched that. So that has a symbolic value to it. And then you come across similar screen I showed you used in the house also, what I showed you first. That's the path which the younger scientist would sort of take in the lunchtime. This is when you come in and see this large space. That's the diagonal cut. And you rediscover that whole thing when you come here. And then there are those wind chimes on the top, and then you hear that sound. You hear the sound of this water, and you are in the presence of something which is very soothing, calm, quiet, meditative. And here you see the void. And we wanted to make sure that you don't see the bottom of this void. There's a sense of, unknownness kind of a thing. And then you climb down few steps and your eye comes very close to the water, and then you see this reflection of the tree. And we use black color here, so the reflections become even more intense. And this is that spout that we designed with brass. Symbolically, you are giving away, from this, the whatever knowledge and money, whatever. And this is the diagonal axis which meets this void. These are those openings which start from 1 and start increasing. And then in the night, they get lit up. And that, unfortunately, some of the trees have lost the top, so we have replanted some of them. That's that path which is leading. That's the tree, that's that Bodhi tree. Looking back, looking through the screen at that timeline, his achievements and things like that. Looking back, and these are those benches where you will see a lot of inscriptions within that. And then there is a path. Actually, there was a scooter parking here, and we discovered that there are this set of trees. So we added this, and these are this whatever, and the philanthropic tasks what he did. All this is engraved there. So when you have a time, you can just walk through it and read through his philanthropic work. That's the Mercedes that you see at the other end as you climb up. And these are the benches where you can sit. That's on the right side is a research lab, where he used to work. And there are more than some 300-400 scientists who are working there, or maybe more. Must be close to about 400 scientists must be working there. So they all walk here in the afternoon. And the way the sun comes down, the whole light quality changes. You have a different, we worked with a lighting consultant called Linus. And then the whole ambience, actually the way these trees are lit up, that whole space feels like a cathedral, with a roof on the top. So that's it. Thank you so much. I think I took much more time than required. So that was the last slide. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for sharing all these projects. And it was very inspiring.
Yeah.
As in, some of them are quite inspiring. As in, one line that you said quite resonated with me, which said that building itself is changing. That's why it's building. It's a verb in itself.
Yeah.
So that resonated quite a lot with me.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And then your projects actually had local influences plus technical advances, and it's an amalgamation of everything. So it's quite inspiring to see how execution is also done. I think that's what we as a new architects, we will learn from your projects.
Thanks.
Yes, sir. And then the last one with the memories, as in when you said the presence of absence, it just resonated as in you've designed what we know rather than creating a completely different foreign concept. As in, it's what we design is what we know, and what we know is what we design.
Yeah, very true.
Yes, as in, it's inspiring for us. I would like to ask the audience to please kindly put up their questions in the question and answer box. We do have a question from Vibhuti Mansar. He's also given you a comment. I think he says, nice to have you back after 2007. When he featured our work in the 15th anniversary souvenir of SONA. This is from Vibhuti Mansingh. Oh. I
have wonderful memories of that trip.
Yes.
But I never realized that it was 13 years back. I always thought that it was 10 years back.
Yes, almost 15 years.
Yeah.
He also has a question for you, sir. He says he would like to ask you.
You can talk right now. Yeah, you can ask your question right now.
Yes.
Will you see me?
Yeah, I can't see you.
I see you. Okay, doesn't matter.
Okay.
Well, can you arrange for him to see me?
You have to switch on the video probably. Your video.
I thought I had switched it on. Where is it? Select a speaker test. Whole space with temporary.
Maybe you can ask a question meanwhile. You have to switch on your mic probably. Yes.
And now the mic is off. Vibhuti sir, your mic is off right now. Yes.
Yeah. Hi, how are you? You have to switch on the mic.
Yes, sir.
You have to switch on the mic.
Vibhuti sir, so your mic is off.
Yeah, it's okay now.
Yes, sir.
Hi, how are you? Long time.
Fine. It's great to see you again. Of course, you don't remember me, but we remember you.
I do remember. After seeing your face, I remember.
I see. That's very kind of you.
Yeah.
Let me show you our souvenir of that time.
Yeah.
And it works.
Oh, yes.
I hope you still have a copy of that.
I have wonderful memories of my trip. That's why I started the talk with that, whatever we experienced, and it was great.
Yes. We had great company that time, about 125 architects from all over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Raj Rewal was there.
Yes, Raj Riwal was also there, and we had another session at the Institute of Engineering.
Yes, correct.
Also remember.
That's what I was telling Ruchi, that I had given a talk there also. I was talking to Abhishek about it, that I had given a talk.
Yeah. Well, we can send you a copy of this if you don't have, although it's very old, it doesn't matter. You have added a lot of work, and we have seen your work. I have got some ideas on it also, and maybe I'll steal some of your ideas, but we'll give you due credit. Don't worry.
No. I mean, it's a process of learning for all of us. So it never gets picked up directly. You sort of you always add something of yours into it. So it's
yes. And Raj Riwal came back subsequently.
Okay.
I think it was last year or the year before.
Mm-hmm.
And one question I always like to ask these very experienced architects like your good self is, tell us freely and frankly about your grumps, grievances, and grudges against whoever you want to identify. Please.
Well, you have to look at positive things. There is no point looking at negative things, because always there are positive things in every project you look at, every person you look at. So the grudges would always be there, but instead of looking at that, let's look at positive things and move on. That's a nicer way of handling it, I think.
Oh, come on. I had hoped you would not give such a diplomatic answer. You can be free and frank with us.
Sorry, I lost the thing in between. No, most of our problems are related to execution. Because fortunately, during last almost like 15, 20 years, we are working with almost the same clients, same set of clients. So we know each other pretty well. And they come to us because they like our work. So the problem comes more at an execution stage, getting a right person to execute it. And then you have these bylaws problems and things like that. Sometimes they are very stringent, where sometimes there is no meaning in following certain things. But as a law, you have to stick to it, and then you have to work around it. So those are the challenges. Those are the things which we constantly keep fighting for. But still, you try to sort of achieve that kind of quality that you are looking at. So there's a struggle every day. It's not that I won't say that it is. It's always fun, but finally when it is over, if all, including the bidder and the client, everyone is happy, even let's say not 100% you'll never get, but even if you get say 80%, it's a big achievement in our context. I think in probably our way, systems of work and the kind of technology accessible to us, the workmanship accessible to us.
I see. Okay, you are a master diplomat. Okay. You know what Mr. Raj Rewal said?
Yeah.
He had pretty mean words towards some institutions and individuals, which I don't want to repeat here.
Okay.
Raj Rewal was quite frank.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Nice meeting you. Nice actually seeing you.
Right.
All the best.
I would again like to ask the audience if they have any questions. So please kindly put them in the question and answer box. Yeah. as in continuing your lectures, in among these, is there any that resonate with you quite well? As in, is there something, the one that's quite special to you, though among those projects?
Sorry, just tell me. Ask me
I
again.
was just asking, among the ones that you've described,
Yeah.
among those projects, are any of those? Which ones are the most dear to you?
Well, I mean, again, I would give it a diplomatic answer. Everyone, every project is important to you, but the thing is, why I chose different types today. I intentionally wanted to show different scales. So that's the reason why I chose first house, and then which was and then much larger house what we did now. A very small library building compared to what we have done school now, and again a spiritual thing. So actually, one thing about architecture, and I was listening to one of these talks where they say that if architecture is overlapped with spirituality, it gains a very different dimension. And that's why the places like temples or, churches, mosques and all, they gain a very different spatial quality. Because when you go there, you go with a different spiritual mind, your mindset is different. And that makes that experience very, very different. And makes it much more deeper. Your connection is much deeper with the space. And that's the reason why I showed those two spiritual spaces that, I think you enjoy that kind of a involvement of, the spiritual involvement into the space as much, much more greater. And that's what I probably would, to answer your question, as I experience walking through that monument, whenever I go there, I always feel kind of at peace, at that, the feeling of connection with that void, and connecting it with Dr. Anji Reddy, whom I worked very closely. So I do feel that presence of absence, what I call it, and that's a nice experience to be there.
Okay, so we have a question from Amit Jaiswal. He is a final year student.
Yeah.
And his question is, what to do and what not to do after graduation?
What to do is to be passionate, to be extremely passionate about whatever you like, and then stick to that. And you have to keep probably money in the background. The money can be the passion, but I'm talking about the creativity as a passion. And then it could be anything. It could be absolutely anything. It could be dealing with something very small or something very big. But if you just be passionate about that, all the other thing will fall into place. And I think to put it very very simply, you have to find out what you love, what you enjoy doing, and you have to sort of continue doing that. And I'm sure after passing out, after becoming architect, there must be some part of architecture profession which you must be really in love with. It may not be, it's not necessary that everyone has to be a great designer. Somebody might just look at a door handle and create something which is absolutely amazing. Somebody would look at sustainability. Somebody would look at something totally different. But even creating a nice set of working drawings and coordinating, you could be interested in even services coordination or not. But whatever it might be, if you do it by putting your heart into it, you're bound to do great in your future life. But yes, that's something which you have to love, something which you have to really enjoy.
And that is helpful for all the freshers who are starting profession.
Yeah.
Another question we have is from Amrita Paudel, and she says, whenever we get to design memorial landscapes, we try our best to portray their lifestyle, their journey through experiential landscape, like explained in your last project. The question is, how can we portray those so that the visitors can experience what we want to deliver them?
Well, actually, the way we did it was we never added anything additional in terms of landscape. If you look at it, most of the trees here were existing. Most of the we took references from the existing things and then tried to sort of relate to that. So that was an exercise which was a reverse exercise. So we were fortunate enough to have this setting, which was almost, we were responding to that. Now, probably your question is where we don't have this kind of setting available. And if there are no references, am I right? Probably I would probably take it that way. And in that case, you have to create your own language. Here we were kind of responding to the existing set of parameters which were given to us or what we found on the site. Now, on every site, you would find something or other. I mean, even if it is absolutely plain site. Like they say that when Corbusier started designing Chandigarh, there were all these plain lands, but he started with Himalayas at the background. So he started drawing first Himalayas. That became a reference for him to draw because that scale was totally different. So whatever site you would have some references and you would start designing for that. The climate, for us, the climate is always the most important thing because all our customs, rituals, everything revolves around the climate. And even the way we talk, the way we walk, whatever I feel it is, most of our customs are all because of the way climate worked on all our previous generations, all our ancestors for millions of years. And that is what created the kind of lifestyle, the architecture, everything. So I would actually relate it to the way sun moves, the way wind comes in, and using local flora, fauna, whatever is available to you, and then try to connect it with that, and then create architecture out of that, or create feelings out of that. And it's about the kind of smell, especially in the landscape, the sound and the smell and the touch, and so it's more about the senses, and that's what we even experience. And even if you are talking about a memorial, that's where you hear birds, you hear those wind chimes, you hear sound of water, then there is these flowers with fragrance and all that. So it creates that mood. It sort of connects you with something divine, I feel, because nature makes you comfortable, because all our ancestors grew in nature, and that is what is into our genetic system. So whenever we are in connection with nature, we are at ease, as almost as a rule. So whenever you bring nature into the building, that gives you that added advantage to be at peace, to be at connected with nature. And instead of doing anything else, the first thing is if you connect a built environment with the nature and sort of blur that boundary, you have done half of the job, I feel. And the time plays an important role, because as the building ages, the nature takes over and it starts complementing architecture and becomes part of it. And that's what nature always does. Nice things to the building, to the built environment. And I have many set of pictures where the way we started building and how it looks after about 15-20 years, all covered with trees. And that's what we enjoy. That's why I showed Mr. Doshi's picture of that IM with all the creepers taking over and all, and how it ages, how it absorbs. So I think our approach should be towards creating that absorption of nature into the built environment.
Thank you, sir, for the answer. Another one we have is from Sunena. Sorry, sir, before that, I would like to convey a compliment for you from Sarita ma'am, Sarita Maske ma'am, and she says that she admires your work a lot, and then your work is excellent.
Thank you so much.
So next question we have is from Sunena. She writes, enlightened by your presentation, absorption of nature in a building is quite interesting. How can you achieve such architecture in high density areas?
Yeah, I mean, we always had this problem that, actually, if that one project often comes to my mind is Rahul Malhotra's that one of that projects in Hyderabad, where he creates that one almost like a box and covers it with creepers all around. And you are actually creating a vertical garden, which is not just a garden, but it sort of humidifies the building. So you have 40 degrees outside, and there's a misting device which happens along that whole layer of greenery, and it cools the air and cools the building within. And every floor you are in connection with nature. So there are different ways of doing it. I mean, we have done quite a few projects where there are a lot of these double height, triple height areas at different levels where you allow the nature to come in. So you obviously you won't be dealing with these large lawns and but there are ways of bringing it. But even if you bring natural light into the building and not create these huge footprints, which most of these IT professionals and all, they're creating these office buildings which are such huge glass boxes with large footprints, and you don't get natural light within the office itself, and you don't even know once you go in whether it is a daytime or it's a nighttime, because everything would be artificially lit, artificially air conditioned. There's artificial smell there, and everything is artificial as against sitting, and being part of the nature. So we have to find devices of doing it, and it is possible to do it. It's not that it's not that difficult to do it, as long as you set up very high kind of parameters, and you say that I would probably work towards achieving that, and somehow you will gain it in the process of design.
So I guess that's where the challenge comes between technology and nature, the balance between them.
True.
So another question we have is from Babram Bhattarai sir. He's also an academician. So he's asked, have you ever experienced in a project in which you have to deal with a climate like us, as in Kathmandu? If yes, could you highlight some of the challenges and experiences that you have?
Well, we haven't worked in such a cold climate anywhere, but that would also be fun, because finally it's about finding a way of I really haven't studied the climate in Kathmandu, how hot it becomes. I'm not very sure about it, and how cold it becomes, I'm not very sure. But but there are different ways of the way. The best thing is to study the dress. That's what I always tell the students, that the way a traditional costume, which would have been sort of grown over millions of years, hundreds of thousands of years, and that is your first enclosure, first layer of protection, and the building is a second layer of protection, which you call as a shelter. So your first shelter is your dress, the second layer of shelter is your building, and I always find a lot of similarity in the two. So if you are aware of something which happens in Rajasthan, where people wear these big turbans and So you need insulation on the head from the heat from the top, and that's how most of the houses have these thick layers of either mud or hay or something on the top, thick layers of walls. And if you look at Kerala, which is down south in India, which is hot, humid climate, and you will find people wear very few. They just wear one lungi and one minimal cloth. And if you see the houses, it has maximum verandas. You want the breeze to come onto your body. So if you study the local dress traditionally, you will find answers within that. So I'm not a right person here to talk about the answers to the situation in Kathmandu, but if you really study the local dresses, I'm sure there will be references to it.
That was quite an interesting correlation. So he has another question. He says, could you suggest tips for academicians like us? What we need to focus while formulate the design concept based on your experience?
Well, I think it's, I actually haven't understood exactly what specific he's asking for.
So he's asking what we need to focus while we formulate the design concept, as in based on experience.
Design concept, it is for the students or for any practicing individual?
So I think both will be quite helpful.
Okay, actually, I would say how we look at it rather than for us there are two ways of looking at it, and one is I always compare it with the Google map, zooming out and zooming in. So one way of looking at it is you zoom in and then look at every small things which is happening into the project, and zoom out and look at the entire picture. Like you're not only looking at the plot of house probably, but you are looking at the neighborhood, you are looking at the city, and you are looking at the country and all that, and you are looking at all those influences. But at the same time, you go in and look at a door handle also, and you have to sort of keep switching in between. And whether you go from inside out or you go from outside in, while this is totally your comfort level as a designer. Sometimes you go to the site, look at all those elements around, and you get an inspiration right there standing on the site. I mean, there are some cases where you would actually draw something which happens to fit into the whole place because you know about the place. You have grown up there. It's not a place which is alien to you. So you go there and you start responding to the surroundings immediately. But in some cases you keep struggling. Many times you know what you want to achieve at the back of your mind, but it's not coming. You keep struggling, but you don't give up. And many times there were situations where even after the construction have started, we have made some changes and then changed the thing. Then we explained it to the clients that by adding few things, it is going to make a big difference, because it's finally, you keep, sometimes it just comes just like that. Sometimes you keep struggling. So both the things happen, and I'm sure it happens to everyone, that no one would be so prolific that every project you work on, you just come out with some great ideas. So there is a struggle involved. Sometimes it just comes, but it's all about analysis. It's about understanding. That's the reason when I showed that idea of school, I was talking about dealing with all these different age groups, whether you are solving that idea directly or you keep it at your back of your mind and then you keep responding to it while designing every small detail. That again becomes a process of it. So to make it very short, there is something which is measurable and something which is immeasurable in the process. It is easier to start with a measurable and find answers to it. So the measurable thing is a climate, which we know exactly. If you are talking about Kathmandu, you'll know how much temperature it goes to, what is the wind pressure, what is the snowfall or whatever, how the water flows onto the site. The functionality is measurable. So if you are doing a school, you would know that for 30 students, what are the dimension of the class, what is acoustics, what kind of sound has to transfer from teacher to student, or what kind of workshop you have to create. So all these are, if there is a kitchen, you have to understand the functionality of the kitchen. Now these things, the technology is a measurable. So that also, which technology. That's the reason I showed that housing complex with that tunnel forming and all. But then you go to this immeasurable part, which is like I showed, that you create an elevating experience. Now, how do you create that elevating experience? That is very, very personal. And each person will have a different way of creating that elevating experience. So as an individual, you will find your own sources of creating that elevating experience, and you will try to put it into your work, and that's how the whole design develops.
Yes, as in, I guess our key reference is functionality and what we do day-to-day life that derives our concept.
Yeah, but you have to go beyond that, because you can't stop at that. That is something which any engineer can also do. But if you want to bring feelings into the space, if you have to create a connection with something much larger, something which inspires you, something which elevates you and all that. So that's where architecture begins. Actually, I think when the measurable ends, that's where your creative process starts. And that's where architecture begins. I think it doesn't end where the measurable, when they are dealt with measurable. It is understood that you have to master functionality, you have to master technology, you have to master climate. This is something which you cannot have excuses for not studying climate or not studying functionality or not studying technology. But after studying all that, you go beyond that and create architecture. That's where it becomes immeasurable. And that's what Louis Kahn talks about.
Okay, sir. That was great, sir. So another question is from Poojan Gajure, and he's asking how actually our concepts, those are deep in one architect's mind, can be portrayed in built architecture so that everyone can perceive it correctly, attend to it, and grasp it objectively.
Well, I don't. I mean, it's a wonderful question, and it does make you think. But I feel you cannot create a uniform experience for everyone, and I don't believe that you read a philosophy and then go and see the building. I don't believe in that you have to experience it yourself. And though all these philosophies and are important in terms of motivating yourself, finally, like Doshi would always say that whatever you learned, you have to go back and tell your grandmother and in your local language, and she should understand what you are talking, and then you have really understood it. Yeah. And I think the building should also be like that. If grandmother can understand that building, what I meant is a person without all that intellectual baggage that you carry about the concepts and ideas and all, and as a lay person, you go there, and then what that person feels, to me, is more important than reading all these philosophies and then going and trying to understand whether it is fitting into that. So to me, it is more connection of a heart rather than intellect. So the work should speak by itself, and it should communicate through heart, not through intellect. It should also do that, but actually, I would give you one more example that when you are listening to a great music, what happens is first you just like a tune of the music and you start tapping your then if you are more interested, you would start listening to the words. and then you start finding meaning with the words, and then you start liking it more if those words are important. Then you start looking at a raga or a, beyond that, and then you said, oh, it fits into this raga. So if I know that, it is even more beautiful. And then probably there is a pause in between, and then you understand that importance of that pause in relation to that entire melody, and that pause becomes even more important. So the great work connects you at different levels. It might connect you at only that fundamental level of liking the tune, or as an intellectual person, you might connect it with a great raga and a whole composition. But if it can connect with both, then it becomes a great work. It's and it actually, the great work always has this connection at multiple levels, and that's what it has to do. It should not be either this or that. No, it has to be both.
So I guess the concept that an architect has needs to be comprehensive to the user also, the space.
Absolutely, yeah.
So another question I have is from a final year student, Nirakash Rashtra from Purvanchal campus. And he says, from your point of view, what do you think is architecture going to be in next 20 years? And what could be the possible situation?
Well, I think it has already started changing because of the technology. And there is a huge intervention of technology, which has, it has never changed so much. There's a quantum jump in last decade, probably. Everything is changing in terms of, I always compare it with industrial revolution. After industrial revolution, suddenly this modern movement came in, and then there's all these masters came, Corbusier, Miss Van der Rohe, F.L. Wright, and Kahn and all that. And they were reacting to that situation, that of creating a new world because of this whole technological revolution. And the second revolution is happening now, which is this IT revolution. And suddenly you find there are so many different changes which are happening. Our transport is changing. Right now you have all these Ola cars, Uber cars, and all. You don't have to necessarily drive. There would be a time where we'll have driverless cars. So your whole transport system would totally change. Your food delivery system is changed now because you order and you get the thing. So the kitchen, which used to be a nucleus of the house, may not remain the nucleus of the house after a few times, because both the couple working and all, nobody wants to come and cook, and the whole idea of sitting together on the dining table as a family and all it's already changing. The education system is changing because the way the classrooms used to be, now during this pandemic, it is all becoming online and all. But even even after that goes off, you would have the classrooms which are the relationship with the teacher and student is changing totally. If you see some of the classes where the students are allowed to even sleep on a bean bag and all, especially these kindergartens and things like that. So the healthcare is changing, even the hospitals and the way. We will have to redefine the place of work. The way we redefine the place of work for Titan office, it's not a conventional office at all. If you go and visit that place, you will find some of them sitting out and working, and it is almost like a nature campus, as you call it. It's not like a glass box where you have series of workstations and people are sitting in a. So you have to start redefining the nature of what a family structure itself is going to be different. And then the house plan, which was which we adopted for last almost like 50 years after the modern movement, or maybe more than 50 years. Now it needs to be changed because each kid wants their own privacy within the room. They want their own TV. They want whatever. So the entire structure has to. I mean, we have to actually question this, whether it is correct to create those bedrooms which are becoming like independent thing, and you are disconnecting the whole family. That has to be questioned. But but the problem is it has already started happening, and probably you have to question it and correct it also.
We have, I think this would have been our last question by Dr. Sangeeta Singh. She had the same question as in some sort, what do you think will be some sort of paradigm shift in the way we design our space after the situation of pandemic? I think you've already answered the question quite.
Yeah. Well, actually, since she talked about paradigm shift, there is something called paradigm curve, which which is like a S. When you say that paradigm curve, it goes horizontal, then it starts rising, and then it again becomes horizontal. And same thing happened during this modern era, or after industrial revolution. That so many new questions came in. That you wanted to create a great world, you wanted to create a utopia, you wanted to challenge every single thing. They started saying decoration is a crime, it has to be functional and things like that. And those parameters, you had a lot of questions, and then you started solving them, and that curve rose straight. And then there was a point, which was in probably 80s and 90s, where all this postmodernism and all started coming. That's where all the fundamental questions were already answered. And then it was more reaction to the modernism. So like these Gandhian principles about truth, honesty, and all that, those basic things were already addressed to, and then you are trying to react to that further. And then that's where that curve started becoming horizontal. And now if you look at it, that paradigm curve has started again. So you will find another S started climbing up already because of these new challenges that we are facing. And probably this pandemic has actually made it faster, that we are started asking questions that how do you really solve these things, and so so that curve is really taking off now. So we are into that already, and within next 20 years, what we are talking about, we are going to see that what really happened during that modernism, early modernism.
Right. So we have Suroj Raj Karnikar. He said greetings to you from fellow architects from Sir J.J. Batchmate Ratan, Batley Boy, and others from 1980s batchmates to you, sir.
Oh, who is the? I didn't get a name.
Suroj Raj Karnikar.
Okay.
Yeah. So nice, he said his greetings.
Nice to know. You're from JJ, is it? She's from.
I guess he is. As in
okay.
That box. So I think we'll have one last question. So we have a question from Nasla Saimi, and she says, "Thank you, sir, for very inspiring presentation." So her query is: during this pandemic, it is very difficult to send students for live case studies to get knowledge before to start a new project. So could you please give ideas to start academic projects like thesis during this difficult period?
Well, actually, this has been a problem. I mean, for thesis, I don't think so. It should be a problem because you can probably choose things which you would have already discussed, or something which is known to the teacher and the student both. But when you give a same problem to the entire class of 30 or class of whatever 60. For a teacher, it becomes very difficult because if there is not a known site, then you cannot comment on it. And if every student starts selecting a different site, then it could become very, very chaotic kind of thing. So some of them who were asking, I was telling them that your college campus would be probably the best thing that each one of you know about. You would have spent 4 or 5 years or 3 years, whatever, together, going into every nook and corner. So take that as a reference and then do some intervention into that college campus. If it is a very tight situation, build something on the terrace. Imagine there are no water tank, there is nothing, and you say that you respond to that and add something onto that. Or if it's a larger campus, you always have something more to add, because then at least you will be talking the same language, because references would be same. Otherwise, we have given one problem now for one of these competition, which I think students from Nepal also should participate into it. It's called drawing board competition by Rohan Builders, which normally it's I think just announced yesterday. We tried to give the problem of these transient workers who work on the site, and for them, how do they stay during the time of construction? And you create a proper houses for them. How to deal with the children also who are small, maybe going to kindergarten or primary school, some kind of a schooling for them, and then creating some kind of positive environment during construction. And it has to be modular, that the builder or the contractor, whoever, who would dismantle that after the building is over, and he will reconstruct it on a different site. So how it could be most enjoyable experience for them as a community, as an individual house. So you have to look at the entire three-dimensional space, and how do you create proper storage unit? How do you, when they work on, cook on the chulas and all, there might be a smoke and all, how you get rid of that in the summer or in the winter, or in the cold place like your situation, how would you handle that? So it's about technology. It's about, being dismantling and then again reassembling and still create that community feeling. And we have given two situations when there is a very dense site on the in a city. How do you deal with that? And when there is a spread out site outside the city, how do you deal with that? So, and the same module, how would you transform them and then reuse it? So those kind of things which are the problems which are all of us are facing now, if those are tackled now, that would probably will become more interesting.
Yes, today's presentation was quite insightful for me, for sure, and I guess for everyone in the audience. So thank you so much for sharing your experience with us.
Thanks, Ruchi. It was a pleasure. Anju is there. Thanks, Anju.
Yes, sir. I would like to request Anju ma'am to give some closing speech to you. Anju ma'am.
Yes. Thank you.
Hi, thanks, Anju.
Hello,
thanks for
sir.
giving this opportunity. I enjoyed it.
I'm still feeling so awed by your presentation, sir. I would like to extend the greetings from the entire fraternity of SONA, Society of Nepalese Architects. And it's been a big privilege and an honor for us to host you today. We were really looking forward to this session, and we are all very, very thankful for giving us your precious time and sharing your works and experiences to our audience. I myself today, I'm feeling so very fortunate, to have met you during the 2019 J.K. Cement Awards night, where you received the Master Award for Lifetime Achievement, which opened this door, I would say. Like you had promised to come over to Kathmandu for your presentation, but then because of the pandemic, we are here today.
But still, you should invite me.
And I would also like to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Aditya Chaturvedi, Vice President of JK Cement, who linked us with emails and all, made this day possible for us. We are still so overwhelmed. I could go on listening to you for hours on end. And what I feel today is, had I been given the chance to do some of my projects all over again, my approach would have been completely different. So we are also very thankful to our audience today who have joined us from Nepal, from RKCA member countries as well. And thank you, Ruchi, for moderating this session and for the fabulous poster that you designed. Thank you. I would like to thank SONA Secretariat and the 13th EC for the ever so great team spirit that they have shown all along. Thank you and a very good evening to everyone. I would also like to notify everybody and Mohe sir also, our next webinar will be on the 4th of September, Friday at 4:15 p.m. Nepal Standard Time. And we will be hosting Dr. Yasmin Lari from Pakistan. So I would like to request everybody to please stay connected, and we hope to get all of you logged in, all of you who are here with us today. Thank you, Mohe sir. It's been such a big privilege for us. And we look forward to you coming to Nepal after this
Sure.
pandemic is over. Yes.
Sure,
Thank you, sir.
Sure. Thank you so much, Anju, ma'am. And thanks, Ruchi, for
Thank you, sir, for joining.